Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. If you're new, a very special welcome to you as well. Today is going to be my very first fashion or clothing related video and I'm very excited. As mentioned in my introduction video, I will be covering things that I adore, such as fashion, but also sustainability and living a cleaner, greener life. So what this video is going to answer is, first of all, what is sustainable fashion? Together with that, we're also going to try and answer what is slow fashion, what is fast fashion, and we're going to have a look at some of the definitions and the buzzwords and things around that. Secondly, we're going to try and answer exactly why should we care? Why should we care about the fashion industry? And then lastly, I'm going to give you some guidelines, some tips, some things that has worked for me in the past, is currently working for me now, in terms of how to dress smarter and getting quality over quantity and also decreasing your carbon footprint while dressing yourself in the morning. So let's get going. Sustainable fashion, also known as slow fashion, can directly be translated into fashion that lasts. Fashion that is slow, in other words, you get more use out of the clothing that you currently own. It is in opposition to what we currently know today as fast fashion. To really understand exactly what fast fashion is, it is best to actually go back into history and just have a look at how we as consumers consume clothing. So in the past, maybe not too many decades ago, we're talking perhaps like 70s, 80s, thereabouts, we had two main seasons, winter and summer. And each region of our lovely planet had the clothes that it required for those two seasons. Later on, companies decided they're actually going to split the two seasons up into 4 seasons, therefore creating a need for individuals to buy clothing for all 4 of the seasons. But then the phenomenon actually happened in the late 1990s and turn of the century, where a concept of fast fashion was introduced, where they actually have 52 mini seasons in a year. In other words, a new little season every single week. By having 52 mini seasons in a year, fast fashion brands are able to produce clothing at a very, very fast pace. Usually in the past, brands would actually secure approximately 80% of their line about a year in advance. But what fast fashion is actually doing is these types of brands, the fast fashion brands, they actually secure only 20% of their designs a year in advance, leaving an 80% of their clothing range open for basically on-the-go designs, where they spot a trend from a very high-end brand and they actually implement that design into their process, and the supply chain then obviously develops the piece of clothing, having it in store within as little as 3 weeks. So from the point where they spot a trend and you actually being able to buy it is only 3 weeks. So they have really fine-tune the supply chain to something that is actually unheard of. There is no real definition of what sustainable fashion is. Therefore, it's currently open to interpretation. Thing is that individuals and companies have different understanding and different standards that they apply as to what sustainable fashion is. This goes into marketing, which influences us as consumers. And these mixed messages and lack of understanding does not help consumers make better, more informed decisions. So even if fast fashion brands have ranges within their collections where they advertise some of those ranges or pieces of clothing to be sustainable, it might not actually be sustainable because there is no grading or rating system being applied to the industry as a whole. More words to confuse customers that get thrown around in the industry are words such as sustainable, circularity, organic, clean, and so forth. But I really do encourage you to do more research by yourself. I'm going to try and condense as much as I know into this video, but there's 2 great resources linked down below. The one is a podcast and the other is a documentary. The documentary is actually, I think, from 2013, and if you haven't seen it, it's really something to watch, and it is quite eye-opening to what this industry really is. With the term sustainable fashion, there is no definite rules as to what defines a piece of clothing to be sustainable fashion. In terms of the labor laws, the way it's manufactured, the way it is being transported, none of that is taken into account. So whenever someone speaks about or talks about sustainable fashion, it is what they define sustainable fashion as, just like this video. And now we're going to go into the why part. I've divided up into 3 parts, but obviously there's going to be more depending on what your frame of reference is and specifically what you're going to be looking at. But the 3 I've divided, or the first one I've divided it into, is the environment. The cost of producing clothes to the environment is drastic and very, very, very polluting. It is actually competing with industries such as the transport industry, as well as the food production, and specifically within the food production, we're talking about meat and dairy industries. If we have a look at the environment and some of the sub-categories thereunder, we can look at things such as the farming of the actual fibers that is needed to produce clothing. Lots of these farms use very, very harsh chemicals, which is bad for the people actually farming it, as well as the environment, and is really not a sustainable way of farming. Therefore, going into something like organic cotton or organic linen is a much better choice for the environment. I've already touched upon the chemicals, but if you actually look at what the chemicals does to the water waste within these fields, it is actually quite drastic to see. The ecosystem around these farms are also then impacted, and of course then more than the water, the wildlife and all of the animals depending on the environment for survival. And then finally, also what happens is, because people treat clothing as disposable, as something that they can buy now, wear once and then throw away, it's actually crazy to think that people actually throw clothing in a dustbin. That, yeah, it's just so, it just blows my mind. But yes, clothing actually really does get thrown into dustbins, and it is actually very, very toxic for the environment even then, because all of the chemicals still stuck inside of the clothes then goes into the ground and again into the water supply. The heaps of garbage actually contributes to the greenhouse gases we have today. So overall, the environment is really suffering because of our poor fashion choices and us making clothing a disposable good. The second thing that I would like to talk about as to why is looking at the labor. Because we as consumers would like to buy these items at extremely cheap prices, obviously someone needs to pay a cost in a supply chain. I really want to take you on a journey of just thinking about it. If you have an item of clothing and you can see that it is actually produced in a country outside of yours that you're currently living, which is most likely to be the case, if not the case for probably, I'd say 90-95% of your closet, think of actually what it costs to maybe grow the fibers that your piece of clothing is made out of. Then you have designs. So there's people actually being paid to design the piece of clothing. And then of course there is the workers making the clothing, and then there's obviously transporting the clothing to the country where you are currently living. And again, there's more costs involved for people actually working inside of the stores. And that is a very, very rough breakdown of a very basic supply chain, and obviously it gets much more complicated than that. But if you factor in then you only paying, say, $5 for a t-shirt, how does that $5 actually get divvied up into all of those different workers and different industries, and even companies that are contracted out to do all of this work? And then of course selling it as at a profit. So again, they're not just breaking even, they are making money off of it. So if you ask yourself, how is it possible to produce something so cheap? Then the answer should be, it is impossible. It is impossible to produce something that cheap and pay everyone. Therefore, it asks the bigger question, who is paying the cost and what costs are they paying? The way clothing is produced has changed drastically over the last few decades. We're talking about very, very poor working conditions, and these complex supply chains doesn't make it any easier to understand it or to actually wipe away some of the issues or solve some of the issues. So you have to ask yourself, if something is too cheap, who's paying the cost? And then the third reason as to why this is important is you. And why am I saying you are important in all of this? As a consumer, instead of just being happy in the things that you own currently, you are led to believe that you need more. And constantly, whatever you are wearing is maybe out the next week, especially when we talk about 52 mini seasons. I mean, who can keep up with that? It's really encouraging false and superficial values, which really just leaves customers feeling very much sad, alone, depressed, and very much poor, because you're spending your money on things that you don't need, but you think is actually going to make you feel good and fit into maybe some group of people. And in spending your money on things that you don't need. So that is the section of why I think we should not be supporting fast fashion. As mentioned before, there is no fast rule around what is sustainable fashion. So I have a few things written down over here which can help you to actually have a more sustainable closet, and that will help you navigate your way in this very confusing industry as it stands today. 30 ways. This is a concept that a company called the Eco Age actually came up with. It basically asks the consumer to actually evaluate the piece of clothing that they are wanting to buy and ask themselves the basic question of, will they wear this item a minimum of 30 times? This forces the consumer to actually maybe inspect the garment. Is it a good enough quality to last 30 times? Will the color fade? Do I like it enough? And will it last? Say you're wearing that item of clothing once a week, and with 52 weeks in a year, you'll actually have to wear it 60% of the weeks in that year. If you've watched this video and you've maybe went into the podcast and the documentary down below, and you might be asking yourself, oh my goodness, my entire closet is filled with fast fashion. Please just don't throw it all out, because that just continues the circle. So instead of throwing any fast fashion items out of your closet, just wear them, and wear them every single day, and make sure that you get the most wear out of every single item instead of buying new things. So don't go around and throw everything out and say like, oh, from now on I'm only buying from sustainable fashion brands and spending lots of money. Just start with the closet that you have and work it. Buy for the life that you have, not the one that you want. Again, Pinterest, Instagram, any type of social media and marketing have these inspirational lives that we all want to aspire to. But that leads us to a point where we might be buying something for the life that we want, but not the life that we currently have. So before you go shopping, again, think of where you spend your time. Do you exercise enough to really buy more activewear? Do you actually go to enough evening events for another formal dress? So ask yourself, what is your life today, and what do you spend your time doing? And whatever you buy, will that be able to translate into, say, workwear as well as casual wear, and so forth? How flattering is it? Sometimes trends can actually make you want to buy something that is a very different shape to whatever you are used to buying. And sometimes you can find yourself buying something that just doesn't work. You want to wear it, but it just doesn't work in your closet. So I urge you to actually go and examine your maybe 3 or 5 favorite outfits and try and find commonalities between all of the outfits. By doing that, you'll easily see like, oh, I actually do like a looser fitting pant, or I actually prefer something without sleeves or with sleeves. And things like that can easily help you determine the style that you actually like, and the style that you are, and the clothes that you are drawn to every single day. That can help you make more informed decisions when going out to buy clothing. Find a good tailor. Clothing doesn't always translate to every single body type out there. For example, my sister and I, if we were to try on the same item of clothing, the dress for her will be too long and for me it will be too short, just because of our height difference, although our waists might be very similar. Finding a good tailor will take an item of clothing and really make it fit your body. It makes a huge difference, and I've seen it so many times. Although I like sewing my own clothes, I'm still a bit lazy when it comes to small alterations. So ask around in your community. There's usually lots of older ladies usually that like sewing clothes, and they are more than willing to fix clothes for a small fee, and it is so worth it. Professional dry cleaners or tailors might also do clothing dye for you, but if you want to do it yourself, I do have a dye video, so I will have that link down in the description box. Clothes swap. My sister and I have been swapping clothes all of our years we've spent here on planet Earth, but you can also do that with a bunch of friends. I have a very good friend that actually invites all of us girlfriends to her house at least once a year or so. You bring your bag of clothing with you, maybe bring a bottle of wine and a snack as well, and every person gets a chair on the clothing or the swapping chair. So you sit there and you can tell a little story about the item of clothing, or why it doesn't fit you, or maybe you've realized that it sits quite tight in some areas and loose in another, and guess what? Maybe that body type is sitting right there in front of you. All of the clothes that you can't swap, you can either then just take home with you if you want to store it away in a cupboard, or maybe give it to someone else, or you then can donate the clothes after the clothes swapping party. Plan your shopping. So before you go into the shops and it's an impulsive Saturday morning, rather just go into your closet and have a look at exactly what you have and what you need. Make a very specific list of things, even with smaller aspects of what the black skirt needs to have. Does it need to have a zipper maybe? Does it need to be a certain length for work? And so forth. Go with a list of specifications with you to the mall or wherever you do your shopping, and make sure that you actually can tick all of those boxes. Otherwise, it's just going to sit in your closet and you're not going to wear it, and you're going to waste your money. It might be a good idea to actually check a thrift shop or any type of secondhand shop, depending on what area you live in. Some cities have loads of options and some less, but in case you can do that, have a look there first before going shopping in the main street. Keep things organized. If your closet is organized and looks a little bit, in my opinion, like a shelf that you would see in a shop, it is much easier to identify items of clothing that you would like to wear every single day. So if it's going to be disorganized and things are not going to be folded up neatly, you won't really know what's going on, and it really makes picking an outfit more difficult than what it could be. Try and only have the clothes in your closet for the season that you are currently in. Store the rest away, maybe up top or in a suitcase somewhere, and have your closet be a little bit more manageable for you during the week. Let your clothes work for you. What I mean by that is sometimes you just have something in your closet that you've really not thought about in a really long time. So what I do is every single night before I go to bed, I have a look at the weather, I look at the day, I look at the next day, so I look at my calendar, what type of meetings do I have, and I take out my clothes already. That way in the morning, I already have my outfit planned and there's no running around trying to iron a shirt or finding that black shoe that you know you have. This way you get more wear out of the clothes that you have, instead of just running into your closet in the morning and in a rush just picking the same 3 things that you always wear. So really make your clothes work for you by wearing them loads of times. Fabrics. If you invest in better fabrics and better quality fabrics, you will get much more wear out of your closet, even if you have to dry clean your clothes or wash it. Generally speaking, I like buying less synthetic and more natural fibers, so you can always just check the little inside of the label telling you exactly what is your item of clothing made out of. Also, I'm gonna have a video series coming up looking into specific fabrics and fibers and why some fabrics are better than others, so keep a lookout for that. Quality over quantity. Instead of going out and buying a pair of black jeans, rather just maybe wait a little bit longer, save up a little bit more money and buy a pair that you really like, instead of buying a pair of jeans from a fast fashion brand. If you really like an item, then you will wear it more and it will probably last longer if you invest a little bit more. So really invest in quality items instead of having quantity. One pair of very well fitted black pants is much better than having 3 cheap ones. In this category, you can also maybe do a bit of research as to what sustainable brands have shops in your area or that maybe sell online. It is worth looking into other brands outside of the normal ones that you usually buy at. Lastly, be happy in your own skin. With all of that being said, life is so much more than what we put on our bodies. Buying something that's expensive and you can't really afford and you'll probably just throw out in a couple of seasons or a couple of years is really not worth it. Rather spend your money on things that will actually last. Maybe go on a great holiday, invest in your friendships and your relationships around you. Do fun stuff, do things that last in terms of memories. Rather spend money on your health and your happiness. I hope that this video was informative. If you have any questions, leave them down below. Any other comments as well. And if you think that I've maybe missed some things or you want to point me to another documentary or a podcast series or something, I'd love that. So please leave everything down below. I hope that this video made you think about some of the choices that we make on a daily basis. If you like this video, please give it a big thumbs up and I hope to see you here soon. Thanks guys, bye.